What do you think is the most underrated movie ever? Ever see The Notebook as an adult? Holy shit, the main characters are terrible people. Romantic male lead meets romantic female lead by harassing her while she is already on a date, and clearly states she would like him to leave her alone. So what does he do? Jumps on a moving Ferris wheel and threatens suicide if she doesn't agree to a date with him. The only decent people in the film are the two people the main characters cheat on, with essentially no remorse. Shit is toxic as all hell. The scene, https://www.youtube.com/watch V equals 1 SWS and T equals 46S. This is how I feel about almost every romance movie or romantic comedy. They almost always involve some plotline about the man pushing, ignoring a woman's boundaries or disinterest in him because he thinks he knows what she wants better than she does. And in the end turns out he was right. He gets what he wants and she gives in and falls for him. It's gross, perpetuates a lot of toxic and dangerous ideas, and is not romantic at all. Okay, most of the answers in this thread suck. Yeah, all are listing like fun action summer blockbusters. They're not supposed to be art or anything, they're just not busting on screen. I think it's weird to say Avengers is overrated, like who rates that as anything but a for fun adventure? The real most underrated movie in history is Crash. It won the Oscar for Best Picture. Not a good movie at the time, has aged terribly in just 16 years. Problematic portrayals of race and sex issues. Horrifically stereotypical characters. This movie was bad and it won Best Picture. That's the most underrated movie ever. I remember watching that movie for the first time with my ex-girlfriend. She rented it thinking it was the Oscar-winning shit flick. Instead we watched a mind-bending juxtaposition of sex and near-death experiences. After we finished it she didn't want to watch the other Crash. We're still friends to this day. Making Brokeback Mountain jokes was like the easiest way to get a laugh in the 2000s. I watched it recently for the first time and holy shit, that is a good movie. I felt like I got broken up with at the end. Frown. I remember this too. Mentioning Brokeback Mountain was sure to spark someone being called gay. Like it was so bad I never watched it and actually thought it was gay porn until like a few years ago I saw it and saw Heath and Jake and was interested. I love that movie and regret letting all the gay teasing of the mid-2000s blind me to it. I remember that terror but I didn't watch it due to it being a cowboy movie. Yet there's no saloon rumbles to jaunty piano music, no nicknamed villains like Tumbleweed Lenny, and there were certainly no six-shooters being fought with on horseback duels. The English Patient. Everyone made such a big deal over it. I just didn't get it. Blah. Boring. Where is this thing going? What's the fuss? And then of course come the Oscars. 12 nominations. Nay, I think Seinfeld made fun of it. The English Patient, and I still refer to it that way, if I ever have to, which hopefully is never. Nope. I know what you're going through. I too once fell under the spell of opium. It was 1979. I was traveling the Yangtze in search of a Mongolian horsehair vest. I had got to the market after sundown. All of the clothing traders had gone, but a different sort of trader still lurked about. Just a taste, he said. That was all it took. The number of conversations I have used this in is truly incredible, particularly at work to my old boss. I will not have you turn my office into a den of iniquity. A thing about this quote, in one of the early episodes, SO1E03 The Robbery, Jerry leaves NYC for a few days to do a show in Delaney's apartment sitting. Jerry says, and I quote, "One more thing, Benny's, regarding sexual activity, strictly prohibited, but if you absolutely must, do us all a big favor. Do it in the tub." Laney cried. Maybe an unpopular opinion and it's really not that big of a movie, but I didn't enjoy Toy Story 4. I think the story was tied up in Toy Story 3 and TS4 was just an excuse to milk the franchise a little bit more before ending it. Toy Story 3 had a definite ending to everything. I was confused when 4 was announced. What else did they have to explore? Who had a character arc to satisfy? I saw it and it was a solid meh. I've still yet to see it for this reason. The 2 when I was growing up were just perfect to me, and 3 was a lovely surprise when it came out, which was clearly made for people who grew up with 1 and 2. I took one look at that stupid fucking fork in the trailer and just, number. Agreed. I think Flynn is one of the best male characters in a fairy tale Disney has produced. Not a high bar but still, and Rapunzel's relationship with Mother Gothel is way more interesting and nuanced than anything in Frozen. It's gaslighting. The musical, though I do love Tangled and regret writing it off. It was released when I assumed that anything with the Disney brand was poison. I was roped into watching Frozen and only then went back to see Princess and the Frog and Tangled. Both are wonderful. I spent more than 2 years playing Tangled on repeat all night long because it was the only way my son would sleep, and if it stopped he would wake up and make you start it over and stay up until the love song and then pass out again. I still love that movie. My son has super bad issues with night terrors and sleepwalking combined, so we got creative with how we helped him. Try holding a 3-year-old while they are asleep and can't wake up but think monsters are trying to eat him, so he's fighting you with all his might, but if you put him down he runs around throwing things and jumping off furniture and other crazy and dangerous things. When we found out this one simple thing to get him some sleep, we went for it. There were still nights where he had issues, but they decreased by 90% and it was crazy. Weaning him off that movie was interesting. While I agree with the thread that Tangled and Moana are arguably better movies, don't forget how groundbreaking this was for Disney. The plot centered around the love of sisters saving the day and not some hero on a white horse, who literally turned out to be the bad guy. This was a huge break from the vast majority of other Disney cartoon feature-length movies. One could argue Pixar does non-love interest-themed movies well. Now Frozen 2. Yikes. The only redeeming part of that movie was Elsa tying her hair back before she battled the ocean. I hate it when females in movies knowingly go into a fight with their hair down. Bugs me on a disproportionate level. Let It Go is a perfect Disney song. It's catchy and Idina Menzel is unbelievable. But as a parent whose music streaming services are backlogged with a constant stream of kiddo music, that's the only song worth a damn. Moana, in stark contrast, is like the Fleetwood Mac rumors of Disney soundtracks. I would argue the intro song by the Ice Cutters is underrated. Love is an Open Door is great as long as you look at it through the lens of it secretly being a critique of love songs. She's smitten way too young and he has alternate motives. And finish each other's sandwiches is a great line. And in summer is great. The problem with Frozen is after the show basically stops. They fall hard into the third act problem. I remember that the ending was basically yup, having a baby is kinda a big deal actually as a coming of age thing, and I was WTF. I'm the same age of these characters, I would be scared shitless if I was having a baby at their age. What kind of shitty teenagers are those? I might have to rewatch it now that I'm an adult. My impression may differ. Great indie acoustic guitar soundtrack though. It's worse as an adult. I watched it a few years ago and I remember relating to the characters when I was younger. Like, haha look at all these weird quirky people. Then somewhere along my journey I got less weird and quirky and it's just an annoying movie now. Stupid kids get off my lawn. Black Panther, not because it's bad, it's a perfectly good superhero movie, but it was hailed as the second coming or something. The first review that wasn't utterly fawning got dogpiled. I teach at a 90% plus black high school. My kids love anime, DBZ shirts, My Hero Academia jackets, and one girl who wanted me to watch Darling in the Franxx. I have watched it but did not own up because no way in hell am I discussing that sexual clusterfuck with a teenager. They also love superheroes. As a white man, I never understood how important representation was until I started teaching here. Black Panther was a cultural phenomenon in the school. Everyone had seen it, some more than once. I get that it is a pretty basic superhero movie, but that was what was so important. Black superhero, black scientists, and a black villain. They had never seen that on the big screen, and it freaking mattered to these kids. I agree that it was a good, but not great, movie that deserved to do well, but maybe not the cultural phenomenon it was, at least in terms of pure movie making. That said, I think a big part of its success came because of the impact it had on the black community. It was arguably the first mainstream, massively successful movie featuring an almost all-black cast, set in Africa, with the black superhero, etc. So I think a big part of its success was that it spoke to a large segment of the population in a way no movie had really done previously. Apart from that, it was finally a black movie that wasn't just about black suffering. Sure, 12 Years a Slave is a better movie, but black people just wanted their Mad Max-style fun-ass movie, and we're basically back to waiting on another. Just about every black movie before and after are all the same thing: slavery or gangs, drugs. Let me have a movie featuring predominantly black people that isn't one of the above two. Soul, the recent Pixar film, is the closest we've got, and it still leans heavily. Why can't we have a nice rom-com? Some brothers on a road trip just chilling, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, but black. Okay, so not to disagree with your point, but to offer a perspective why this movie is much better than people give it credit for, regardless if you like it or not. I remember watching the movie the first time and thinking it was just boring, predictable ... very beautiful but shallow and not much substance. Even the song sounded emotionless, not with heart, except the scene where Emma Stone does her audition and the ending piano piece. But then my cousin, who lived in LA/the film industry, gave me a whole new perspective that the whole point of the movie was to reflect LA in all of its flaws and perceived conceptions. Like, even though everything is covered in glitter, everything isn't as perfect as it seems and isn't as deep as it looks. Thus why most of the music numbers are bright and colorful, but more emotionless, shallow. And it's not until the end, when the characters truly confront reality, that they find true beauty, love and life ... That's why their relationship ends and they move on, such as the case in real life, or how Emma Stone's audition piece is the most emotional music piece because it's from the heart, etc. Again, I think it's still overrated for what people perceive it to be, but I also think it's severely underrated for what I think it's actually supposed to be. But then again, maybe I'm completely misunderstanding it. I mean, no one really takes them seriously. Like, they really dropped 7 cars from the back of a plane. We all know it's not realistic, and we don't watch it for that. We watch it for a couple of good-looking guys to beat the shit out of some other good-looking guys and then get in their cars and go vroom vroom. And don't forget family. Donnie Darko. It's a fine movie, but the low-rent pseudo-intellectuals who jizz their pants trying to explain how it's so much deeper than it seems are what ruined the whole thing. This movie is like listening to a second-year philosophy student try to explain how they understand how everything works because now they just get it. It can quickly get pretentious and insufferable. And yes, you should doubt my commitment to sparkle motion. See, I find the haters of DD to be worse. Like, I remember at the height of the movie's popularity around 2005, if you mentioned it, reactions were very decisive. I liked the movie a lot when I first rented it on VHS in early 2002. Saying this to a DD hater would make them angry to the point where now I have to defend the movie. For example, my buddy, who hated it, questioned why I enjoyed it. I said nothing like it was deep or anything. I just liked it. I thought it was entertaining. Well, that wasn't a good enough answer for him, and I couldn't just like it for that reason. I feel the same way about Rick and Morty. For every RM fan that claims it's deep, there's 10 haters who claim that RM fans are idiots who falsely think it's deep. No, we just think the show is entertaining. I get not liking Titanic, but people saying it wasn't a good film blows my mind. I mean, it was basically the type of movie theaters were built to show. That not being your thing, okay, it not being one of the best at what it is, I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, it's technically brilliant, visually stunning, mostly historically accurate, and as much as people hate it, star-crossed lovers is an endearing theme in art, and Titanic was its best representation on film since Casablanca. And then there's the acting, especially Winslet's and to a slightly lesser degree Leo's, who hadn't quite come into his element yet, and it's directed by James Cameron, which I don't feel like I need to qualify. Anyway, I'm a huge history buff and was fascinated by the Titanic anyway, so I love every movie about the ship that's decent. Maybe I'm biased. I kind of felt like Lady Bird was pretty overrated. I didn't think it was anything special, just another coming-of-age story, but people made it seem like it was the best film ever, at least at the time. A24 has got to be the best studio/franchise/distributor, whatever the hell they are, in the game right now. They fund really exceptional filmmakers who are on nobody's radar, and with this model have become a staple on the playlists of most film buffs these days over the last decade. I think Lady Bird is in the middle tier of A24 movies, but their bar is really damn high. If I see a trailer and it says A24, I am likely to be interested in it. Even the films that I didn't especially like are better than any mass-market trash that get pushed out the doors. The Lighthouse ... says A24 on it and has Willem Dafoe. Instantly wanted to see it, and it was great. The reason why this film keeps getting on top lists is because of how it changed the film industry. At the time it was almost experimental in its camera work, very intimate compared to other films of the time, but to us now, it's boring, slow and not interesting. I watched it for the first time during the pandemic, thinking it would be really boring. I was actually amazed at how glued I was to it. It really felt important. I don't know. I couldn't put the world to what was so different about it. Worldly, I just don't know, but I do understand why it is so revered. You're entitled to not like it, and other people shouldn't say that someone is too uneducated to get a movie. That said, I find it to be a pretty amazing film. But I also like my movies to have as little story as possible and just be good performances and thoughtful cinematography. For me, a story exists to back up images and moments. Lit does that in spades. Yes, but the movie itself, the thing the question was about. Can you tell why American Sniper was overrated? Because, personally, I hear that this movie made anti-war folks think it was pro-war and pro-war folks think it was anti-war, which is a pretty good achievement, I reckon. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a few years since I watched it, but it seemed like they glossed over all of his military experience too quickly. Day 1. Kyle walks into enlistment office. Day 2, welcome to the SEALs. Also, during the peak firefight at the end of the film, when all hell is breaking loose, he calls his wife and tells her he wants to come home. Now's not the time for a phone call, dude. We're being shot at from all sides. Disclaimer: I haven't watched the whole movie. Take my opinion with a grain of salt. I thought the scene was funny, just completely ridiculous. Definitely reminds me of people at the local convenience store in suburban hell. Granted, that kind of humor doesn't vibe with everyone, but it was funny just seeing this dude with obvious tan lines from his wife beater ask for 2 packs of cigs like he's gonna smoke them all and acting corny as hell. Oh, I don't mind goofball humor like this. This particular scene didn't grab me, but I'm not opposed to it or offended by it in a vacuum. What bothers me is the insistence by fans and reviewers that this is actually scathing, razor-sharp commentary of the vapidness of American culture, and that only the truly big-brained will get it. It was as cool as it was because it was the first film to do modern 3D well and make it more than a motion sickness-causing gimmick. That is what cements it in film history, despite being otherwise mediocre. For the next 5 years every movie tried to replicate that, with few managing to pull it off as well. They've mostly figured it out now, but for a long time Avatar was one of the only 3D films that actually worked, and it was mind-blowing at the time. It falls very flat watching it on a TV, or likely even with the full experience, now that experience is relatively commonplace. This seems to be based entirely on your personal opinion to it. Like obviously it can't be compared to Saving Private Ryan. It wasn't quite the same type of movie. I know this might sound like a copy-paste comment, but I really enjoyed the use of the Shepard's tone in the movie. To me it made it constantly seem as though some bombing run was about to fly over, and it helped build like a dreadful anxiety to the whole movie. That and the grayness to it all made it even more stressful. I get it if you don't like it, but making that comparison is apples to oranges. Among film snobs, The Man from Earth, overrated movie suggestions. It's probably one of the most over-suggested movies of all times. The acting feels like I'm watching community theater. Much like community theater, the setting, effects are minimal and allow the entire thing is driven by action, dialogue. Except there basically is no action, there isn't even really a plot. There's just the premise and the dialogue it produces. The premise is that a college professor claims to be thousands of years old, and his buddies just ask him a bunch of questions about it. It's supposed to create witty, highbrow dialogue but just falls completely short and feels like it was written by a first-year philosophy major. Edit/u/Bozoid really sums it up below. TMFE is a cool idea for a film, with none of the elements of an actual good film. Clever exposition, good acting, interesting characters, character development, cinematography, music, etc.